"Don't get in that car." The child's voice rang out, trembling but urgent, as if every second could already be too late. In a cold, dark alley, where no one dared to speak, a tiny little girl dared to shout those words at the very man the entire city feared. The mafia boss froze. His hand, just about to touch the car door, stopped midair. His cold eyes slowly lowered. There stood a blonde little girl wearing worn but clean clothes, her eyes filled with tears, looking at him as if she knew a secret no one else did. No one understood what was happening. No one dared to step closer. But one thing was certain: that little girl wasn't just afraid. She was trying to save him. And what made the mafia boss go still wasn't just the warning, but the way she looked at him as if she had seen him before. So who is this little girl? And why does she know something that even the mafia boss himself doesn't? If this story touched your heart, take a moment to reflect on the quiet power of kindness, especially when no one else chooses to. Show it. Share your thoughts in the comments, and tell us where you're watching from, which city and country are you in, and what time is it there right now. It's always amazing to see how stories like this connect people from all over the world. If moments like this remind you of the beauty of humanity, please like the video and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss more powerful stories that celebrate compassion, courage, and the simple acts of kindness that can change a life. October 2025, Chicago's South Side carried the sharp bite of early autumn wind that sliced through threadbare jackets and thin soles like a reminder of everything the city refused to give. The streets around the Grand Lakeview Hotel and Casino gleamed under sodium lights, but a block away, where cracked sidewalks met chain-link fences, the glow barely reached. There, on the corner of 39th and Halsted, 9-year-old Lily Harper set up her small lemonade and cookie stand every afternoon after school. The stand was nothing more than a folding card table her grandmother had salvaged from a church rummage sale, its legs wobbling on uneven pavement covered with a faded red checkered plastic cloth. A hand-lettered sign in blue marker read, "Fresh lemonade, 50 cents, homemade cookies, $1, though the cookies were often broken pieces she had baked with whatever flour and sugar her mother could scrape together from the mended food pantry. Lily's small frame moved with the careful economy of someone who had learned early that energy was a finite resource. She wore the same oversized hoodie every day, a once bright navy thing that had belonged to her father before he shipped out overseas with the Marines and never came home. The sleeves hung past her fingertips. She rolled them up twice just to pour lemonade from a scratched plastic pitcher. Her dark blonde hair was pulled into a messy ponytail with a rubber band that had lost its stretched strands, escaping to stick to her pale, wind-chapped cheeks. Malnutrition had hollowed her face slightly, made her eyes seem larger than they should, the kind of large that drew pitying glances from passers-by, who hurried on anyway. She was thin, too thin, her collarbones sharp under the hoodie, ribs faintly visible when she stretched to reach the top shelf of her backpack for more napkins. Sleep came in fits on the lumpy couch in their one-room apartment, interrupted by her mother's restless pacing or the neighbors' arguments through thin walls. Cold nights seeped through the single-pane windows. She curled under a blanket so worn the threads showed through, hugging her father's Marine Corps dog tags against her chest like a talisman. Beside her stood Mia Gonzalez, her best friend since kindergarten, equally 9, equally small, but with a fiercer set to her jaw. Mia's family had been evicted twice in the last 3 years. She carried the same wary alertness Lily did, though hers manifested in quick darting glances and a readiness to pull Lily away from trouble. Mia's dark hair was braided tightly, her coat a hand-me-down winter parka missing half its zipper. She arranged the cookies in neat rows, counting them under her breath to make sure no one shorted them. "Don't give extras today," she muttered to Lily. "Last time that guy took 3 and paid for 1. We can't afford charity." Lily nodded without argument. She knew the math too well. 50 cents here, $1 there, enough for milk, maybe bread if they stretched it. Her mother, Sarah, worked double shifts at a 24-hour diner 6 blocks away, coming home smelling of grease and coffee, eyes red from exhaustion. Sarah tried. She always tried. But the bills piled up faster than tips. The landlord threatened eviction notices taped to the door like accusations, and the food stamps ran out before the month did. Some nights Sarah cried quietly in the bathroom, the sound muffled by running water so Lily wouldn't hear. Lily heard anyway. Those nights she lay awake, fingers tracing the embossed eagle on her father's dog tags, whispering promises to the faded photo in her backpack, a family barbecue from years ago. Her dad, grinning in uniform, Sarah laughing with a hand on, her pregnant belly, Lily not yet born but already loved. The Grand Lakeview loomed across the street, a tower of glass and brass that seemed to belong to another city entirely. Limousines pulled up under the porte cochere. Men in tailored suits stepped out, laughing women in heels that clicked like money. Inside, chandeliers dripped, light slot machines chimed endlessly, and the casino floor smelled of perfume and cigar smoke. Lily had never been inside. Street kids didn't cross that invisible line. But she watched. She watched the way the doormen nodded respectfully to certain men, the way black SUVs idled at the curb with tinted windows that reflected nothing back. She watched Ethan Caldwell emerge most evenings at precisely 6 o'clock, tall and fair-skinned, his face carved from the same cold precision as the building he owned. He moved like someone who expected the world to part for him, broad shoulders under an overcoat that cost more than Sarah made in 3 months, dark hair neatly combed, eyes hidden behind sunglasses even as dusk fell. He never looked at the corner stand. No one from that world ever did. Lily felt the gap every day, a quiet ache that settled deeper with each ignored fresh lemonade, sir. She didn't resent it exactly. Resentment required energy she didn't have. She simply accepted it as fact. Some people lived in light, others in shadow. She and Mia belonged to shadow. Yet something stubborn flickered in her chest, something her father had planted before he left. A belief that kindness mattered even when no one noticed. She offered free cookies to the old man who collected cans, smiled at the tired bus driver, who sometimes stopped to chat. Small acts, invisible acts. But they kept the cold from settling too deep inside her. Today the wind gusted harder, rattling the sign. Mia shivered, hugging herself. "We should pack up soon." Mom said no, staying after dark. Lily glanced at the hotel clock, visible through the lobby doors, 4:45. Another hour maybe. One more sale could mean real milk instead of powdered. She poured a cup for a passing woman who dropped exact change without a word and hurried away. Lily's fingers were numb. She flexed them, ignoring the hunger gnawing at her stomach. Breakfast had been half a banana shared with Mia. Lunch was a school sandwich she had saved half of for her mother. A black SUV rolled to the curb opposite them. The driver stepped out tall, watchful, scanning the street. Lily's eyes flicked to him, then away. She knew better than to stare. But Mia's hand tightened on her arm. "That's his car. The big boss. Don't look." Lily didn't. She busied herself wiping the table, but her mind wandered. What would it feel like to step inside that world just once? To be warm, full seen. The thought brought a flush of shame. Wishing was dangerous. It made the real world hurt more. Across the street, Ethan Caldwell stood at his penthouse window high above, looking down at the city he had built through calculated risks and unrelenting control. The view was flawless, Lake Michigan glittering in the distance, the skyline sharp against the fading light. Yet his gaze drifted unbidden to the small figures on the corner, 2 girls at a wobbly table, one pouring lemonade with careful hands, the other watching the street like a sentry. He had seen them before. Every day, in fact. Invisible. Disposable. Like so many others, he had stepped over on his way up. Something stirred in his chest, sharp, unwelcome. Guilt, no. He had buried guilt years ago under layers of necessity. Remorse closer, but still distant. He turned away, jaw tight. Emotions were liabilities. People were tools or threats. Nothing more. Yet the image lingered, the smaller girl lifting a cup, offering it to no one in particular, her face pale and determined. He felt it like a pinprick, tiny, insistent. He pushed it down. There was a meeting in 10 minutes. Rivals circling. Business to handle. Down on the corner, Lily handed a cookie to a young mother pushing a stroller. The woman smiled gratefully, dropped an extra quarter into the jar. Lily's heart lifted just a fraction. Small victories. She glanced at Mia. "One more hour," Mia sighed but nodded. "One more. But if anyone weird comes, we leave." The wind picked up again, carrying the faint chime of slot machines from across the street. Lily wrapped her arms around herself, dog tags pressing cold against her skin. She didn't know why she felt watched tonight. Didn't know the man high above had paused just for a second, his hand on the glass, something cracking inside him that he refused to name. Not yet. October 2025 draped Chicago in a thin gray twilight that turned the lakefront into a sheet of hammered steel. High above the city, on the 28th floor of the Grand Lakeview Hotel and Casino, Ethan Caldwell stood at the floor-to-ceiling glass wall of his private office. Hands clasped behind his back, shoulders squared inside a charcoal wool overcoat cut so precisely it seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The room smelled faintly of cedar from the custom bookshelves, aged leather from the Chesterfield sofa, and the clean metallic tang of the espresso machine that hummed quietly on the credenza. Everything here was deliberate. The matte black desk the size of a small car, the single abstract painting on the far wall, a storm in oils purchased at auction for 7 figures because silence had a price. The crystal decanter of single malt scotch resting untouched beside a single lowball glass, untouched tonight. Ethan had not allowed himself a drink in 18 months, not since the night the blade had found the space between his ribs and left him bleeding on marble in a warehouse on the west side. The scar still pulled when he breathed too deeply, a private reminder that even control had limits. At 38, he looked younger than the years should have permitted. Fair skin, unmarked by sun or excess, dark hair clipped short at the temples, jawline sharp enough to cut glass. People who met him for the first time often mistook the stillness for calm. Those who knew better understood it was containment. He had built this empire: casinos, real estate holdings, quiet investments that never appeared on public ledgers, through precision and zero tolerance for deviation. Schedules were sacred. Trust was currency he rarely spent. People were variables, assets to be managed, or threats to be neutralized. Sentiment was a luxury he had long ago declared insolvent. Yet tonight the variables refused to stay in their columns. From this height, the corner stand looked like a child's toy left on the sidewalk, red checkered cloth flapping, two small figures moving in careful orbits around it. The blonde girl Lily lifted a plastic cup with both hands, offering it to a man in a cheap suit who waved her off without breaking stride. She lowered the cup slowly, set it back on the table, and for a moment her shoulders sagged in a way that made something low and unfamiliar twist in Ethan's chest. He turned from the window, jaw tightening. He did not do this. He did not watch street children. He did not feel anything about them. They were background noise like traffic or wind. And yet the image persisted, pale hands trembling slightly as she poured another cup. No one wanted, the oversized hoodie swallowing her frame, the stubborn set of her mouth that said she would stand there until the streetlights came on or the cold drove her away. The intercom buzzed once. "Sir, the Detroit representatives are in the private dining room. They're impatient." Ethan's voice came out level, almost soft. "Tell them 5 minutes." He crossed to the desk, opened the middle drawer, and removed a slim folder marked only with yesterday's date. Inside, surveillance stills of 3 men moving through the casino floor last week, faces he recognized from old photographs, rivals who had never quite accepted that Chicago belonged to him now. The knife attack 18 months ago had been their signature. They preferred messages written in blood. Tonight they wanted a sit-down. A truce, they claimed. Ethan knew better. Truces were pauses between wars. He closed the folder, felt the familiar coil of tension settle between his shoulder blades. The scar pulled again, sharp hot. He ignored it. Pain was information, nothing more. Down on the street, Lily wiped her hands on the hoodie sleeves and glanced at the hotel clock through the lobby doors. 5:12. 48 minutes until 6 o'clock, when the black SUV always appeared and the tall man in the overcoat always emerged. She had never spoken to him, never needed to. He was weather-distant, inevitable, indifferent. Yet something about the way he walked made her pause each evening, long strides head up, as though the sidewalk itself had been laid for him alone. She wondered in the quiet moments when no customers came what it felt like to move through the world without apology. Mia nudged her. "You're staring again." "I'm not." Lily's voice was small, almost lost in the wind. "Just thinking." About what? Lily hesitated. About how some people never have to ask twice for anything. Mia snorted softly. "They don't ask at all. They take." Lily didn't answer. She reached into her backpack and pulled out the small photo album, 4 pages of stiff plastic sleeves, edges curling from too many touches. The first picture, her father in dress blues, arm around Sarah, both of them laughing at some forgotten barbecue. Lily wasn't in the frame yet, but she felt present in the way her mother's hand rested protectively on her own stomach. She closed the album quickly, throat tight. Looking too long made the missing feel sharper. Inside the penthouse office, Ethan's phone vibrated against the desk. A text from his driver SUV, ready at 5:55. Detroit crew brought extra muscle, 3 in the lobby, 2 more circling the block. He exhaled through his nose. They were testing him. Fine. He would pass the test. He took the private elevator down the mirrored walls, throwing back his reflection, calm face, steady eyes, the faint white line of the scar hidden beneath his shirt. When the doors opened on the mezzanine level, he stepped out into controlled chaos dealers, murmuring at tables, high rollers laughing too loudly, security moving like shadows. He walked through it without slowing, heads turned, conversations hushed. Power was not shouted here. It was recognized. Outside, the air hit him cold and clean. The SUV idled at the curb, black paint gleaming under the porte-cochere lights. His driver opened the rear door without a word. Ethan paused, gaze drifting unintentionally, almost against his will, to the corner. Lily was packing up. The wind had torn the sign loose. She was trying to tape it back with a strip of duct tape she had salvaged from somewhere. Her fingers shook. Mia held the flashlight from her phone so Lily could see. The beam caught Lily's face, pale, tired, determined. For one heartbeat, their eyes met across the street, hers wide and startled, his unreadable behind the tinted lenses he had not yet removed. Ethan felt it like a current under his skin, sharp, electric, wrong. He should not be looking. He should not care. And yet the sight of her small, stubborn offering lemonade to a city that refused to drink tore something loose inside him. Not pity. Something older, deeper. Remorse perhaps for every person he had ever walked past without seeing. Guilt for the life he had chosen, the one that demanded he remain blind to anything that might soften him. He looked away first, stepped into the SUV. The door closed with a solid, expensive thud, but the image stayed. Across the street, Lily exhaled shakily, heart tripping too fast. He looked at us. Mia frowned. Probably checking for trouble. Guys like him don't see people. They scan for threats. Lily nodded, but her fingers lingered on the dog tags under her hoodie. For the first time, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, someone up there had seen her. Really seen her. The thought was so absurd, so dangerous that she pushed it down hard. Wishing was a luxury she could not afford. Inside the SUV, Ethan pressed 2 fingers to the scar through his shirt. The pain flared, grounding him. He told himself it was nothing. A momentary lapse. He had meetings, rivals, a city to hold, but the coil in his chest tightened. Something had shifted, small, almost imperceptible. And he knew with the same certainty he knew the feel of a loaded gun, that it would not shift back. Not tonight. Not ever. October 2025 pressed colder against Chicago's south side as the afternoon bled into evening. The wind had teeth now, scraping along the chain-link fences and rattling the loose sign on Lily's lemonade stand. 5:37, 23 minutes until the black SUV would glide to the curb and Ethan Caldwell would step out, coat buttoned against the chill he never seemed to feel. Lily's fingers ached from the cold. She flexed them inside the hoodie sleeves, the fabric damp from earlier sleet that had come and gone like an afterthought. The pitcher sat half-empty lemonade, sloshing weakly with each gust. Only 3 cookies remained on the plate, arranged in a careful triangle as though neatness could coax a customer. Mia stood with her back to the wind, arms crossed tight over her thin parka. "We should go. Mom's gonna be mad if I'm not home before dark." Lily glanced at the hotel clock again, 5:39. Just a little longer. Maybe one more sale. Mia's eyes narrowed. "You always say that, and we never get it." Lily didn't answer. She knew Mia was right. The street had emptied. People hurried past with heads down, collars turned up, unwilling to pause for anything that cost even 50 cents. She reached into her backpack for the small thermos of hot water she had filled at the school fountain, before leaving enough to make one last cup of weak tea for her mother when she got home from the diner. The thermos was dented, lid cracked, but it held heat longer than anything else they owned. Across the street, under the porte-cochere of the Grand Lakeview, 3 men in dark jackets gathered near the valet stand. They lit cigarettes, smoke curling upward in slow spirals that the wind tore apart. Marco, Ethan's head of security for the last 4 years, stood slightly apart, his broad shoulders blocking the glow from the lobby doors. The other 2 leaned in, voices low. They spoke in rapid Spanish, the kind that rolled fast and clipped the way people did when they thought no one around them could follow. Lily froze mid-reach for a napkin. She understood every word. Her father had taught her Spanish during the long summer before his last deployment, sitting on the cracked stoop of their old apartment, flashcards in hand, laughing when she mixed up verbs. "You'll need it someday, Mija," he'd said, ruffling her hair. "The world's bigger than English." She had kept the habit alive with library books and overheard conversations at the food pantry. Now the language came back sharp and clear. Marco's voice carried on the wind. "Exactly 6. When he opens the door, the device is wired under the driver's seat remote trigger from across the street. Clean. No trace." One of the others laughed, short and ugly, and if he survives the first, Marco patted the side of his jacket. "Back up. Always back up." The third man exhaled smoke. "He's been distracted lately, watching the corner kids." Softening. Marco's smile was thin. "Good. Makes him predictable." Lily's heart slammed against her ribs so hard she thought it might bruise them. The cup in her hand trembled. Lemonade sloshed over the rim and onto her sneaker. Cold, soaked through instantly. She didn't feel it. Mia noticed. "What's wrong? You look like you're gonna be sick." Lily couldn't speak at first. Her throat had closed. When she finally managed words, they came out small and cracked. They're talking about hurting someone." Mia followed her gaze. "Who, the man? The one who comes out at 6. "Mr. Caldwell." Mia's face hardened. "How do you know? They're too far. They're speaking Spanish. I understand it." Mia stared. "You never told me that." Lily swallowed. "Dad taught me. I didn't think it mattered till now." The words hung between them, fragile as frost. Mia's hand found Lily's wrist, cold fingers gripping hard. "We have to tell someone." Who? Lily's voice rose thin with panic. "The police. They won't believe 2 kids from the south side. Hotel security. They work for him." Mia's grip tightened. "Then we go home. Right now. This isn't our problem." But Lily couldn't move. Her eyes stayed locked on the 3 men. Marco flicked his cigarette into the gutter. It sparked once and died. They dispersed casually, one heading toward the lobby, the others melting into the shadows beside the building, as if nothing had been said, as if a life weren't measured in minutes. Inside the penthouse, Ethan paced the length of his office phone pressed to his ear. His voice stayed low, controlled. Tell the Detroit crew the terms haven't changed. They want peace, they walk away from the riverfront properties. No negotiation. He ended the call, set the phone down with deliberate care. The scar pulled again, sharper this time, as though the blade remembered its work. He crossed to the window. The corner stand was still there. Lily hadn't packed up. She stood motionless, staring across the street, face pale even from this distance. Something in her posture, rigid, small, frozen, sent a cold thread through his veins. He told himself it was nothing. Street kids saw things, heard things. It passed. But the thread tightened. Down below, Lily's knees buckled slightly. She caught herself on the table edge. The plastic pitcher tipped, spilling the last of the lemonade in a pale arc across the pavement. Mia grabbed her arm. Lily, they're going to kill him, Lily whispered. At 6. When he opens the door, Mia's eyes widened. You sure? Lily nodded once. Tears stung hot against the cold. I heard it all. For a moment, the world narrowed to the space between them, 2 9-year-old girls on a freezing sidewalk holding the weight of something too big for their hands. Mia looked toward the hotel, then back at Lily. We can't do anything. We're nobody. Lily's chin trembled. If we don't try, then we're part of it. Mia exhaled sharply. You sound like one of those after-school specials. Lily didn't smile. My dad used to say the same thing. See, wrong happening, staying silent makes you part of it. Mia was quiet, then softer. Your dad was a Marine. He had a gun. We have lemonade cups. Lily looked down at the spilled lemonade pooling around her sneaker. The liquid was already freezing at the edges. She felt the humiliation rise sharp, burning. Thin, hungry, cold, powerless. A girl with nothing who had heard everything. The unfairness of it clawed at her chest. Why her? Why now? Why did she have to know? She lifted her eyes to the tower of glass and brass. Somewhere up there, Ethan Caldwell moved through warmth and light, unaware that 21 minutes from now, someone planned to end him. The thought made her dizzy. She swayed. Mia steadied her. I have to warn him, Lily said. Mia's voice cracked. They'll laugh at you. Or worse, maybe. Lily's hands curled into fists inside the hoodie sleeves. But I can't pretend I didn't hear. High above, Ethan felt the shift again, stronger now. He pressed his palm to the glass. The city sprawled beneath him, glittering and indifferent. Yet his gaze returned inexorably to the corner, to the small blonde figure who hadn't moved, who stared up at the building as though searching for something she couldn't name. Remorse surged, violent, sudden. For every day he had walked past without seeing. For the walls he had built so high that only a child's desperate courage could breach them. For the man he had become, wealthy beyond measure, powerful beyond question, and utterly alone. He turned from the window. The clock on his desk read 5:42. 18 minutes. The scar burned like a brand. He told himself it was coincidence. A child's stare. Nothing more. But deep inside, something cracked wider. Something that looked suspiciously like hope or guilt, or the first faint stirrings of a love so fierce and unexpected it terrified him. A love for a child he didn't yet know was his own. A love that would soon tear his world apart and rebuild it in her image. The sky bruising purple above the rooftops, as though the city itself were holding its breath. 5:43. 17 minutes remained. Lily's sneakers squelched in the spilled lemonade that had frozen into thin, sticky ice on the pavement. Her legs felt leaden, the cold seeping upward from her toes like rising water. The stand was half-packed now, the plastic pitcher emptied into the gutter, the last 3 cookies wrapped in a napkin and tucked into her hoodie pocket for her mother. Mia stood beside her, eyes flicking between the hotel entrance and the street, every muscle coiled. We have to try, Lily whispered again, the words tasting like ash. Mia's face twisted. Try what? Run inside that place. They'll throw us out before we say hello. Lily looked up at the Grand Lakeview's glowing facade. The revolving doors spun lazily, admitting well-dressed couples who laughed softly as warm air rushed out to meet the cold. Inside, marble floors, crystal chandeliers, the distant chime of winning slots. Outside, 2 girls in threadbare coats, one trembling so hard her teeth clicked. The contrast burned behind Lily's eyes, sharp, humiliating, unfair. She had spent her whole life on this side of the glass. Tonight the glass felt thinner than ever. She took a step toward the street. Mia grabbed her sleeve. Lily, no. You heard them. Marco. He's security. If he sees you, I won't let him see me. Lily's voice cracked, small and determined. I'll talk to the driver, the one who waits by the car. He looks kinder. Mia's laugh was bitter short. Kind. He works for the man who owns half the city. Kindness doesn't pay rent. But Lily was already moving, crossing the street at an angle that kept the valet stand out of direct view. Her heart hammered so violently, she felt it in her fingertips. Each step jarred her thin frame. Hunger made her head swim. She hadn't eaten since the half sandwich at lunch, and even that had been shared. The wind whipped her ponytail across her face. She pushed it back with numb fingers. The black SUV idled at the curb, exhaust curling white in the cold air. The driver, Chen, though Lily didn't know his name, stood beside the open driver's door, scrolling on his phone. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark suit that fit too well to be cheap. He looked up as Lily approached, expression shifting from boredom to mild surprise. "Excuse me, sir." Lily's voice came out softer than she intended, timid, polite, the way she spoke to teachers, or the librarian when asking for extra time on a book. She hated how small it sounded. Chen glanced down. "Yeah, kid," Lily swallowed. Her mouth was dry despite the cold. Do you work for Mr. Caldwell?" Chen's eyes narrowed slightly. "Why?" She glanced over her shoulder. Marco and the others were gone from the valet stand, but she could still feel their presence like shadows on her skin. "I heard something. Bad. About the car." Chen straightened. "What'd you hear?" they said. Lily's voice dropped to a whisper. "They said there's something under the seat. Something that goes boom when he opens the door." Chen stared at her for a long beat. Then he exhaled through his nose, almost a laugh. "Look, I get it. You want money. Sell your story somewhere else. I'm working." Lily's stomach dropped. "I'm not lying. Please." They were speaking Spanish. "I understood," Marco said. Chen's tone sharpened. "You know names now," Lily nodded frantically. "He's the one with the jacket." He patted something under it. "Back up," he said. "If the first doesn't work." Chen studied her pale face, trembling hands, oversized hoodie hanging off narrow shoulders. For a second, something flickered in his eyes, doubt, maybe pity. Then it hardened. "Kids make up stories. Go home before you get in trouble." He turned back to his phone. Lily felt the rejection like a slap. Tears burned hot behind her eyes, but she blinked them back. "Please, sir. He's going to die." Chen didn't look up. "Not your problem." She stepped back, numb. The world tilted. She grabbed the SUV's fender to steady herself. Cold metal bit through her sleeve. Dizziness washed over her, hunger, fear, cold, combining into a sickening whirl. She thought she might be sick right there on the curb. Mia appeared at her side, pulling her away. "Come on." "He's not listening." Lily let herself be led back across the street, legs unsteady. They reached the stand just as a hotel security guard emerged from the lobby, uniform, crisp badge gleaming. He scanned the sidewalk, eyes landing on the two girls. "No loitering," he called. "Pack it up and move." Lily's heart sank further. The stand wasn't even in the way. But rules were rules, and street kids broke them simply by existing. The guard approached. "I said move." Mia stepped in front of Lily. "We're leaving." The guard's gaze flicked to the spilled lemonade, the wobbly table. "And take your trash with you." Lily bent to fold the table, hands shaking so badly the legs clattered. Humiliation flooded her, deep choking. Thin, cold, hungry, dismissed again. Unseen, unheard. She wanted to scream, to demand they listen, but the words stuck in her throat like broken glass. High above, Ethan stood at the window again, coat already buttoned, briefcase in hand. 5:48. 12 minutes. His phone buzzed. Chen all clear outside. Detroit crew still waiting in the dining room. He exhaled slowly. The meeting would be tense, but he had prepared. He always prepared. Yet his eyes drifted downward once more. The girls were packing up. The blonde one, Lily, moved slowly, as though every motion cost her. She looked smaller than before, shoulders hunched against more than the wind. Something in her posture clawed at him, familiar, buried deep, the way she had looked when she spoke to Chen. Desperate, determined, terrified. The scar throbbed in time with his pulse. He pressed a hand to his side, feeling the raised line through wool and cotton. Remorse surged again, fiercer, now violent, tearing. For the child on the corner who had tried to reach him. For the man he had been, the one who walked past without a glance. For the empire built on indifference. He turned from the window. The private elevator waited, doors open, soft chime echoing in the empty hallway. He stepped inside. Down below, Lily collapsed the table legs and stacked it against the fence. Mia helped silently. Neither spoke. The silence between them was thick with fear and failure. Lily looked up at the hotel one last time. The penthouse windows reflected the city lights, impenetrable, distant. Somewhere inside, Ethan Caldwell prepared to walk out into a trap he couldn't see. And she, the invisible girl with nothing but dog tags and a dead father's lessons, had failed to warn him. Tears slipped free, then hot against frozen cheeks. She wiped them away, quickly, ashamed. Crying solved nothing. Mia put an arm around her shoulders. "We tried. That's something." Lily nodded, but the words felt hollow. Tried wasn't enough. Not when someone's life hung on minutes. 5:51, 9 minutes. The wind howled louder, carrying the faint sound of slot machines from inside the casino like laughter at their expense. Lily clutched her father's photo album to her chest. The plastic sleeves were cold against her skin. She whispered to the picture inside, too quiet for Mia to hear. "I'm sorry, Dad. I tried." High in the elevator, descending smoothly, Ethan felt the shift deepen into something irrevocable. A burning in his chest, fierce, protective, overwhelming. Not for the city, not for the Empire. For her, the small girl on the corner who had looked up at his tower with something like hope. He didn't understand it yet. Didn't want to. But the feeling consumed him anyway, passionate, intense, terrifying in its purity. A father's love awakening before he even knew the word daughter. Every breath visible in small clouds that dissolved too quickly. 5:56, 4 minutes. The revolving doors of the Grand Lake View spun one final time, releasing Ethan Caldwell into the evening. He emerged alone, no entourage tonight, only the quiet authority that parted the doormen without a word. His overcoat settled around him like armor, the wool so fine it caught the light from the porte-cochere and held it. The black SUV waited at the curb engine, idling with the low, expensive purr of machinery that cost more than most people earned in years. Chen stood by the rear passenger door hand, already on the handle. Ethan's stride was measured precise each step, a declaration that time bent to him, not the other way around. Yet inside, the coil in his chest had tightened to breaking. The image of the small blonde girl on the corner refused to fade, her pale face upturned, searching the tower as though she could will someone to notice. The way her shoulders had sagged when Chen turned away. Remorse clawed deeper, now raw, unrelenting. He had built walls so high, so seamless, that a child had to stand in freezing wind just to be seen. And he had looked away. He reached the curb. Chen opened the door. Across the street, Lily broke into a run. She didn't think. Her thin legs pumped against the pavement sneakers, slipping on patches of black ice. The wind tore at her hoodie, whipping the sleeves like flags of surrender. Mia shouted after her, "Lily, no," but the words were lost. Lily's heart thundered in her ears, drowning everything else. 4 minutes. 3 now. Maybe less. The dog tags bounced against her chest, cold metal striking skin with every step. She reached the curb just as Ethan's hand touched the open door. "Mr. Caldwell." Her voice cracked high, desperate, cutting through the low rumble of traffic. "Please don't get in that car," Ethan paused. 1 foot already inside the vehicle. He turned slowly, gaze dropping to the child, who had appeared like a ghost at his elbow. Small, trembling, eyes wide with something beyond fear, something fierce and fragile at once. Chen stepped forward. "Sir, I'll handle." Ethan raised a hand. Silent. The motion stopped Chen cold. Lily's breath came in short, painful bursts. She grabbed the sleeve of his overcoat, thin fingers curling into fine wool that felt impossibly soft against her calloused skin. The contact jolted her. She almost let go. But she held on. "They're going to hurt you," she said, voice shaking but clear. "I heard them. Marco and the others. They said when you open the door, boom. There's something under the seat. Remote." From across the street. Ethan's expression did not change at first. Ice over deep water. But something flickered behind his eyes, recognition perhaps, or the faintest crack in the facade. Chen's hand moved toward his earpiece. Sir Ethan's voice cut through, low and lethal. Quiet. Lily kept talking, words tumbling faster now. They spoke Spanish. "I understood. My dad taught me. They laughed about it. Said you've been distracted. Watching the corner. They said back up if the first doesn't work." Marco patted his jacket. "Please, don't get in." The world narrowed to the space between them, a 9-year-old girl in a too-big hoodie, clutching the sleeve of a man who commanded empires, begging him to believe her. Ethan looked down at her hand on his coat, pale knuckles white with strain, thin wrist disappearing into the sleeve. Malnutrition had carved shadows under her eyes, made her cheekbones too sharp. Sleep deprivation painted faint bruises beneath them. She smelled faintly of lemon and cold pavement and desperation. Something inside him tore violent, sudden, irreparable. He had walked past her every day, every single day, seen the stand, seen the child, seen nothing. Guilt surged so fiercely it stole his breath, not the calculated remorse of a businessman weighing losses. This was primal, fatherly, a love so immediate, so burning it felt like violence against every wall he had ever built. He didn't know her name yet, didn't know she carried his blood. But in that instant, staring into her terrified, determined eyes, he knew one truth with shattering certainty: this child was his to protect. From this second forward, no matter the cost. Across the street, Marco stepped out from the shadows near the valet stand. His hand slipped inside his jacket, casual, practiced. The other two flanked him, eyes locked on the scene. Ethan saw it all in peripheral vision. His body moved before his mind finished the calculation. He pulled Lily behind him in one fluid motion, instinctive, protective. Her small frame pressed against his back. He felt her trembling through layers of wool and cotton. "Chen," he said, voice deadly calm. "Code red. Lock it down." Chen reacted instantly, earpiece activated, quiet commands issued. Within seconds, loyal security emerged from the lobby doors, moving with disciplined speed. Not Marco's men. Ethan's. Marco froze mid-step. His hand paused inside the jacket. Ethan's gaze locked on him. "Don't." The word carried across the distance like a blade. Marco's face went still. Then he bolted 6 steps before 2 of Ethan's men tackled him to the pavement. The other conspirators scattered. None made it far. Lily clung to the back of Ethan's coat, breath ragged. The world spun dizziness, shock, cold numbness climbing her legs. She felt the warmth of his body through the fabric, solid and real, and impossibly safe. Confusion crashed over her. This man, this stranger she had feared and pitied in equal measure, had just shielded her like she mattered. Like she belonged behind him. Ethan knelt to her level expensive trousers, brushing dirty pavement without hesitation. His face was close now. She saw the faint scar along his jaw, the tension in his jaw muscles, the storm in his eyes. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. "Lily," she whispered. "Lily Harper. How old are you, Lily?" 9. He exhaled slowly. "You saved my life tonight." She shook her head, tears spilling. I heard them. I couldn't let someone get hurt." Sirens wailed in the distance, police bomb squad summoned by Chen's call. The street cleared in efficient waves. Ethan's security formed a perimeter, keeping onlookers back. He stayed kneeling, hand resting lightly on her shoulder, gentle, careful, as though she might break. Inside, the conflict raged, guilt for every ignored day, remorse for the father he had unknowingly failed to be fierce, protectiveness that threatened to consume him whole. He wanted to gather her up, take her somewhere warm, feed her, shield her from every wind that had ever cut her. The urge was so powerful it frightened him. Lily looked up at him, eyes huge. Shock still numbed her limbs, but beneath it something new stirred, trust, tentative and burning. This man had listened, had believed, had protected. In a world that had dismissed her at every turn, he had knelt on cold pavement and asked her name. The bomb squad arrived. Technicians swarmed the SUV. Minutes later, the lead emerged, face grim. "Sir, we found it. Remote detonation. Under the driver's seat. It would have," he glanced at Lily, edited himself, "been catastrophic." Ethan nodded once. Then to Lily, "You were right." She started crying then, not loud sobs, but quiet, exhausted tears that shook her whole body. Relief. Fear. Overwhelm. The unfairness of it all crashed over her again, hungry, cold, powerless for so long, and now this powerful man looked at her like she was the bravest thing he had ever seen. Ethan stood, offered his hand. "Come inside. It's cold out here." Lily hesitated only a second, then placed her small, chilled hand in his. His palm swallowed hers completely. Warm, steady, safe. Mia watched from the curb, arms wrapped tight around herself, eyes wide with disbelief. Ethan led Lily toward the lobby doors. The doormen parted without question. Warm air rushed out to meet them, scented with polished wood and fresh coffee. Lily stumbled slightly on the marble threshold. Ethan steadied her without a word. Behind them, Marco was being cuffed. The other men followed, but Ethan didn't look back. His focus remained on the child at his side, the one who had risked everything to save a stranger, the one who had just cracked his world open. And in that quiet, condensed moment of stillness amid chaos, he knew whatever came next, he would never let her stand in the cold again. Unyielding night, outside the grand lake view, but inside the private medical suite, on the 22nd floor, the air was warm and sterile, scented faintly with antiseptic, and the clean linen of fresh sheets. The room had been converted years ago for emergencies like this, a king-sized bed with hospital-grade rails discreetly folded away, monitors that hummed softly rather than beeped, floor-to-ceiling windows draped in heavy silk to block the city lights. Ethan Caldwell sat on the edge of the bedshirt, unbuttoned to the waist, a fresh bandage wrapped tightly around his torso where the old scar had torn open during the scuffle. The graze from Marco's panicked shove had been superficial, but the reopened wound beneath it bled steadily until the on-call physician stitched it closed. Pain radiated in hot waves with every breath, but Ethan welcomed it. Pain grounded him when everything else threatened to spin apart. Lily sat cross-legged on the upholstered bench opposite him, still in her oversized hoodie, knees drawn to her chest. A thick blanket, cashmere impossibly soft, had been draped over her shoulders by one of the staff. She clutched it like armor fingers buried in the weave. Her sneakers dangled an inch above the carpet. She hadn't dared take them off. The marble floor looked too clean, too expensive. She felt like she would leave dirt just by existing here. A pediatric nurse had checked her vitals minutes earlier, pulse racing, blood pressure low from hunger and adrenaline crash, skin clammy. The nurse had offered warm cocoa and a plate of butter cookies from the executive kitchen. Lily had accepted the cocoa with a soft "thank you, ma'am," but the cookies sat untouched on the side table. Eating felt impossible. Her stomach twisted too tightly with shock. Ethan watched her. Every detail carved itself into him, the way her ponytail had come, half-undone strands, sticking to tear-damp cheeks, the faint tremor in her hands, the way she kept glancing at the door as though expecting someone to burst in and drag her back to the cold sidewalk. Each observation struck like a hammer against glass, cracking wider the thing inside him that had already begun to fracture on the curb. The physician returned with a slim tablet and 2 printed sheets. He spoke quietly to Ethan first, then turned to Lily with practiced gentleness. "Miss Harper, we ran some routine tests while you were warming up, including a buccal swab standard for anyone involved in an incident like this." Lily's eyes flicked up. "A what?" "A quick cheek swab. Like a Q-tip. It helps identify family connections in emergencies." He hesitated, glanced at Ethan. "The results came back faster than expected, because we prioritized." Ethan's hand stilled on the bandage. He already knew. Some part of him had known the moment she grabbed his sleeve and spoke with such desperate certainty. But hearing it aloud would make it real. The physician cleared his throat. "Lily, the DNA match is conclusive. 99.9%. Ethan Caldwell is your biological father." Silence fell so completely it swallowed sound. Lily's face went blank, shock so profound it erased expression. Her lips parted, but no sound came. The cocoa mug trembled in her hands. Hot liquid sloshed over the rim and onto her fingers. She didn't flinch. Numbness climbed her arms, her legs, her chest. The room tilted. She swayed forward. Ethan lunged, catching her shoulders before she could fall. "Easy," he murmured. "Breathe." She stared at him, eyes huge pupils blown wide with confusion and terror. That's not possible." The physician stepped back discreetly. "Your mother, Sarah Harper, would need to confirm the timeline, but the match doesn't lie." Lily shook her head slowly as though the motion could undo the words. "Mom never said. She said Dad was my dad. The Marine. The one in the pictures." Her voice cracked on the last word. Tears welled again, but these were different, raw, bewildered grieving for a truth she had carried like a shield. Ethan's throat closed. Guilt crashed over him in violent waves, gnawing, tearing, merciless. He had been 29 then, already climbing the ranks, already hardening himself against anything that could be used against him. A brief encounter with a kind-eyed waitress at a diner near the riverfront. He had left the next morning for a deal in Detroit. Never looked back. Never knew. He had fathered a child and left her to freeze on street corners while he built towers of glass and gold. The remorse was so acute it felt physical, a blade twisting deeper than the one that had scarred him years ago. He wanted to roar, to shatter every window in the suite, to demand time reverse itself so he could have been there for every cold night, every empty stomach, every time she had whispered to a photo album, because no one else listened. Instead, he knelt before her again, slowly, carefully, until their eyes were level. "Lily," he said, voice rough with everything he couldn't yet name. "I didn't know. I swear to you I didn't know." She searched his face, fearful, guarded, curious, despite the horror. "Why didn't Mom tell me I don't know?" he answered honestly. "But I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere." Lily's breath hitched. The blanket slipped from one shoulder. She didn't notice. Dizziness swept her again, shock layering over exhaustion, hunger, cold, that still lingered in her bones. She felt small, smaller than she had ever felt, yet strangely anchored by the man in front of her. The man who had shielded her body with his own. The man who had believed her when no one else would. A quiet stillness settled between them, condensed, fragile, electric. Ethan reached out, hesitated, then brushed a tear from her cheek with his thumb. The touch was light, reverent. Inside him, the love that had ignited on the curb burned hotter, fiercer, a father's love, protective and consuming, overriding every instinct he had honed over years of calculated distance. Lily didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned just a fraction into the warmth of his hand. Trust flickered, tentative but real. Overwhelming, burning. The door opened softly. Chen stepped in face grave. "Sir, preliminary interrogations. Marco's talking. The Detroit crew was behind it, paid him to make it look internal. They wanted the riverfront. They thought you were vulnerable." Ethan's jaw tightened. They were wrong. Chen glanced at Lily, then back. "There's more. One of their lookouts spotted her running toward you. They may have seen the connection already." Ethan stood slowly, pain flaring in his side. He didn't care. Double the perimeter. No one in or out without clearance. "And find Sarah Harper. Bring her here safely. Now." Chen nodded and left. Ethan turned back to Lily. She had curled tighter into the blanket, eyes glassy with overload. My mom. She's at work. The diner. She'll be scared. I'll make sure she's safe, he said. Both of you. Lily whispered, almost too quiet to hear. I'm scared. He knelt again. I know. But you're not alone anymore. She looked at him, really looked, and something shifted in her expression, from suspicion to wonder, from fear to the first fragile thread of attachment. It was passionate in its intensity, innocent and absolute. She had spent 9 years invisible. Now a powerful man knelt before her and promised protection. The unfairness of the contrast tore at her thin, malnourished shivering in borrowed warmth while he wore wool that cost a fortune. Yet the tearing brought tears of a different kind relief, so sharp it hurt. Ethan felt it too, the violent conflict between who he had been and who he was becoming in this moment. Remorse for the years stolen, joy so fierce it terrified him, love so overwhelming it threatened to undo him. He opened his arms slowly, giving her every chance to refuse. Lily hesitated, only a heartbeat. Then she leaned forward and buried her face in his shoulder, small arms wrapped around his neck. He felt her tremble, felt the dog tags press cold against his skin. He held her gently, carefully, as though she were made of glass. In that quiet, condensed stillness, amid the chaos of sirens and security chatter below two worlds, collided the street corner, and the penthouse, the invisible child, and the man who had once been blind. And neither would ever be the same. October 2025 stretched into the small hours inside the Grand Lakeview's private wing, where time seemed to slow under soft, recessed lighting and the hush of thick carpet. The medical suite had been transformed, the hospital bed replaced with a wide, upholstered daybed, piled with down pillows and a duvet so white it hurt to look at. Fresh pajamas, soft cotton and pale blue child-sized lay folded on a side chair. A tray waited nearby, warm oatmeal with cinnamon-sliced apples, a glass of milk. Lily sat on the edge of the daybed blanket, still wrapped around her shoulders like a cape, bare feet tucked beneath her. She had finally removed her sneakers. They stood forlorn by the door, soles worn, thin laces frayed to threads. The sight of them against the cream carpet made her stomach twist, filthy reminders of the sidewalk she had left behind. Ethan stood across the room, speaking in low tones to Chen near the door. His shirt was changed to a simple black sweater. The bandage beneath it was hidden, but he moved with careful stiffness. Every few seconds his gaze returned to Lily, quick and voluntary, as though checking she was still there. Still safe. Still real. Sarah arrived just after midnight. Chen escorted her in. She looked smaller than Lily remembered, hair pulled back in a hasty knot diner uniform still on apron, stained with coffee and grease. Her eyes were red-rimmed face, pale with exhaustion and fear. When she saw Lily, she froze, then crossed the room in 3 strides and dropped to her knees, pulling her daughter into a fierce embrace. Baby Sarah whispered, voice breaking. What happened? They said. They said you were here. Safe. But why? Lily clung to her mother, face buried in the crook of Sarah's neck. The familiar smell of fryer oil and cheap soap grounded her even as fresh tears soaked the uniform collar. I heard them, Mom. They were going to hurt him. I had to tell. Sarah pulled back, searching Lily's face. Then her gaze lifted to Ethan. Recognition flickered, old, buried, painful. She stood slowly, hands trembling at her sides. You, she said quietly. Not an accusation, just a word heavy with years. Ethan met her eyes without flinching. Sarah. The room held its breath. Sarah's voice stayed soft, guarded. I never told you. I couldn't. Your world. It wasn't safe. I thought she'd be better without it. Ethan's jaw worked. Remorse surged again, deeper now, layered with the fresh shock of seeing the woman he had once known standing before him, worn thin by time and hardship. I understand why you didn't, but I wish, don't, Sarah interrupted gently. Wishing doesn't change anything. Lily looked between them, confusion knotting tighter in her chest. Mom, you knew him? Sarah knelt again, brushing hair from Lily's forehead. A long time ago, sweetheart. Before you were born, before everything got so hard. Ethan stepped closer, slowly giving space. I didn't know about her. If I had... His voice cracked on the last word. He cleared his throat. I want to make this right. Whatever it takes. Sarah studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded once, small, weary. She's all I have. If you hurt her, I won't. The promise came out fierce, almost desperate. Sarah exhaled. Then let me take her home. She needs sleep. Real sleep. Ethan hesitated. The apartment you're in, it's not safe tonight. Not after what happened. I've arranged a place here. Secure. Warm. Just for tonight. Tomorrow we talk. About everything. Sarah glanced at Lily. Lily's eyes were huge, pleading. The thought of returning to the cold apartment, the thin walls, the dripping faucet, the mattress on the floor felt suddenly unbearable. "Okay," Sarah said finally. One night, Ethan nodded to Chen, who stepped out to make arrangements. The next hours passed in quiet fragments. Sarah helped Lily change into the pajamas. The fabric felt like clouds against skin that had known only scratchy hand-me-downs. Lily ate 3 bites of oatmeal before her stomach rebelled too much, too rich after so long without. She sipped milk, slowly cradling the glass like something precious. Ethan sat in an armchair across from the daybed watching without staring. Every small movement she made registered the way she traced the rim of the glass with a finger, the way her eyelids drooped then snapped open again, fighting sleep. Gratitude warred with guilt inside him, gratitude that she was here warm-fed, guilt that it had taken a bomb threat to bring her into his world. The love burned hotter with each passing minute, protective, paternal, overwhelming. He wanted to erase every hungry night, every cold wind, every time she had stood on that corner invisible. When Sarah stepped into the adjoining bathroom to wash her face, Ethan moved closer. He knelt beside the daybed. "Lily," he said softly, "may I see the photo album?" She hesitated, guarded, curious, then reached for her backpack on the floor. The zipper stuck. Her thin fingers struggled. Ethan waited without offering help. He understood pride even in small things. She pulled out the small album and opened it to the first page. The barbecue photo, her father in uniform, Sarah laughing, the future Lily, still a promise in her mother's smile. Ethan looked for a long time. "He looks like a good man." "He was," Lily whispered. "He taught me to be brave. Even when I'm scared." Ethan's throat tightened. "You were very brave tonight." Lily shrugged one shoulder. "I was terrified." He smiled, small, real. "That's what brave is." She closed the album slowly. Are you really my dad?" The question hung fragile between them. Ethan exhaled. "The test says yes. But being a dad isn't about blood. It's about showing up. Every day. From now on, if you'll let me." Lily's eyes filled again. "I don't know how to do this." "Neither do I," he admitted. "But we'll figure it out together." Sarah returned, then drying her face with a towel softer than anything she had ever owned. She sat on the bed's edge, pulling Lily against her side. Ethan stood. "There's a room next door for you, Sarah. Fresh clothes, a hot shower, whatever you need." Sarah nodded, too tired to argue. When they were alone again, Lily half dozing against her mother, Ethan stepped to the window. The city glittered below, indifferent as ever, but his reflection stared back, changed a man who had spent years building walls, now desperate to tear them down for one small girl. The next morning brought pale sunlight through the drapes. Lily woke to the smell of pancakes. Real ones, not the mix. Sarah sometimes stretched with water. A breakfast tray waited, fruit yogurt, warm syrup. She stared at it, disoriented. Hunger clawed, but so did disbelief. Sarah sat beside her, already dressed in borrowed clothes, simple jeans, and a sweater that fit perfectly. "Eat slow, baby." Lily took one bite, then another. Tears slipped down her cheeks as she chewed. Ethan entered quietly. "Good morning." Lily looked up, shy. "Thank you. For everything." He shook his head. "You don't thank me. Not for this." But he felt it, the budding bond strengthening with every shared glance, every careful word. He arranged for Mia to be brought up. The girl arrived wide-eyed, clutching her parka like a shield. When she saw Lily safe in clean pajamas eating pancakes, her distrust cracked just a fraction. The day unfolded in small healing moments. A doctor checking Lily's weight too low, prescribing vitamins. A quiet conversation with Sarah about rehab options Ethan would fund. Lily showing Ethan the dog tags, explaining their meaning in a soft, timid voice. Through it all, Ethan's inner conflict raged remorse for the years lost, fierce determination to make them count, love so intense it felt like fire in his veins. When evening came and Sarah insisted on returning to their apartment to pack essentials, Ethan accompanied them, security detail, discreet but present. The hallway smelled of mildew and yesterday's takeout. The door creaked open to one-room mattress on the floor, single bulb overhead dishes stacked in the sink. Lily hesitated on the threshold, shame flooding her anew. Ethan stepped inside without comment. He saw the thin blanket folded at the mattress edge, the cracked photo album on a milk crate, the empty space where warmth should have been. He knelt, picked up the album, gently dusted the cover with his sleeve. "We'll bring what you want," he said quietly, "and then we leave this behind." Lily nodded, tears silent. Sarah packed quickly, closed the album, a few toys, the dog tags around Lily's neck. As they left, Ethan paused in the doorway. The unfairness struck him again, violent tearing. This child had lived here while he lived in penthouses. The contrast was unbearable. Outside, the black SUV waited, warm, quiet, safe. Lily climbed in small hand, finding his without prompting. He held it tightly. The bond grew quiet, steady, unbreakable. And in the stillness of that drive, Ethan vowed silently, no more cold nights, no more hunger, no more invisibility, only family. From this moment forward, Chicago like a held breath, the lake wind still sharp enough to sting uncovered skin even as the days grew shorter. 3 days had passed since the night on the curb, 3 days in which the world had tilted on its axis for Lily Harper. The secure apartment Ethan had arranged occupied the entire 24th floor of a quieter building, 2 blocks from the grand lake view, 3 bedrooms, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the water, a kitchen larger than her old apartment's entire living space. The refrigerator hummed with fresh food milk that wasn't powdered fruit that hadn't bruised in transit bread, still warm from a bakery delivery. Lily walked through the rooms on stocking feet, touching nothing at first, as though fingerprints might ruin the illusion. Sarah slept most of the first 2 days, true sleep, the kind unbroken by sirens or neighbors shouting through walls. Ethan had arranged for a counselor to visit discreetly. Sarah spoke in low tones behind closed doors, while Lily sat in the living room hugging her knees, listening to the muffled rise and fall of her mother's voice. The counselor left each time with quiet assurances progress would come slowly, but it would come. Mia arrived on the 3rd afternoon escorted by Chen, in the same black SUV that had once idled at the curb like a threat. She stepped into the foyer, clutching her backpack so tightly the straps creased her knuckles. Her eyes darted wide, wary, from the polished marble underfoot to the soft sectional sofa, the gas fireplace flickering without effort, the view of Lake Michigan glittering like scattered coins. Lily rushed forward. Mia let herself be hugged stiff at first, then softening. "You're okay," Lily nodded against her shoulder. "Yeah, come see." She pulled Mia through the apartment, voice soft and hesitant as though speaking too loudly might shatter everything. The guest room had been prepared for Mia, twin bed with crisp white linens, a desk already stocked with notebooks and colored pencils, a window seat overlooking the park below. Mia stood in the doorway, unmoving. "This is for me." Her voice came out small, disbelieving. "For as long as you want," Ethan said from the hallway. He had appeared quietly, hands in pockets, posture deliberately non-threatening. "Your mom knows. She's okay with it tonight." Mia turned slowly. Her gaze met his distrust sharp as a blade. "Why?" Ethan didn't flinch. "Because Lily asked me to. And because no child should sleep on a floor when there's space." Mia's jaw tightened. "You don't know us." "I know enough," he answered quietly. "I know cold. I know hungry. I know what it feels like to think no one sees you." Mia looked away first, cheeks flushing. She stepped into the room, fingers trailing the comforter, testing its reality. Lily watched, heart aching with a mix of hope and fear. Mia had always been the shield. Now the shield felt cracked. That evening, after Sarah and the girls ate dinner at the long glass table, roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans that snapped when bitten, Mia pulled Lily aside in the hallway. "He's playing nice," she whispered. "Men like him always do. Then they change." Lily shook her head. "He saved me, Mia. He believed me when no one else would." Mia's eyes narrowed. "He's rich. Rich people don't save people for free." Lily's throat tightened. "Maybe he's different," Mia snorted softly. "Keep telling yourself that." Later, when the apartment quieted and Sarah retired to her room, Lily found Ethan in the study. Floor lamps cast warm pools of light over leather-bound books and a wide desk. He sat in the armchair by the window, staring out at the dark water, a glass of water untouched on the side table. The bandage beneath his sweater was fresh. She could see the faint outline when he shifted. He looked up as she entered. "Can't sleep." Lily shook her head, hovering in the doorway. "Mia doesn't trust you." Ethan's mouth curved, not quite a smile. "She shouldn't. Not yet." Lily stepped closer. "She thinks you'll hurt us." He exhaled slowly. "I won't." She studied him, the faint lines at his eyes, the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands rested open on his knees as though waiting for permission to reach out. "Why do you care so much?" The question hung fragile. Ethan looked at her, really looked, and the walls he had spent years fortifying crumbled further. "Because I missed 9 years of your life. Because every day you stood on that corner cold and hungry, I was up here warm and blind. Because the moment you grabbed my sleeve, something inside me woke up and refused to go back to sleep." Lily's eyes filled. "I was scared of you." "I know." His voice roughened. "I scared myself." She crossed the room, then slow, tentative, and climbed onto the ottoman beside his chair, small hand finding his larger one. He closed his fingers gently around hers. "I'm glad I wasn't invisible to you," she whispered. Ethan's breath caught. The love surged again, fierce, paternal, consuming. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressed a soft kiss to her knuckles. "You were never invisible, Lily. I was the one who refused to see." They sat in quiet stillness for a long time, the only sound the distant hum of the city below. The turning point came at dawn the next morning. A low rumble of engines woke them, 3 black sedans pulling up outside the building, tires crunching gravel in the underground garage. Chen burst into the apartment seconds later, face grim. Detroit crew. They didn't like how the last meeting ended. They're here for leverage. Ethan stood calm on the surface storm beneath. Get the girls to the safe room. But Lily and Mia were already in the hallway, eyes wide. Sarah appeared behind them, pulling them close. Ethan knelt quickly. Stay with your mom. Don't come out until Chen says. Lily grabbed his sleeve, same desperate grip as the curb. Don't go alone. He cupped her cheek. I have to keep you safe. He moved to the door. Chen flanked him. 2 more security followed. In the garage, the confrontation unfolded with tense precision. 3 men stepped from the lead sedan, well-dressed hands visible, but eyes cold. Their leader spoke first. Caldwell, you've gone soft. We want the riverfront deeds. Hand them over or we take what matters most. Ethan's voice stayed level. You already tried once. It didn't work. The man smiled thinly. We know about the girl now. Cute kid. Shame if something happened to her. Ethan felt the words like ice water. Rage surged, violent, protective, but he held it. You touch her, you don't walk out of here. A tense standoff stretched seconds, feeling like hours. Then sirens wailed in the distance. Ethan's quiet call to the authorities had already been made. The Detroit men hesitated. Their leader spat on the concrete. This isn't over. They retreated to their cars, engines roaring as they peeled away. Ethan returned to the apartment, breathing hard. Lily broke free from Sarah's arms and ran to him, crashing into his legs. He dropped to one knee, pulling her close. Mia stood frozen in the doorway, watching. Ethan looked up at her over Lily's head. They're gone. You're safe. Mia's chin trembled. She took one step forward, then another. Tears spilled silent, furious. You didn't run, she whispered. Ethan shook his head. I couldn't. Mia's voice cracked. You could have left us. Let them take what they wanted. I would never. Something broke in Mia, then distrust fracturing under the weight of raw truth. She crossed the room, small fists clenched, and stopped in front of him. For a long moment she stared, searching, testing. Then she stepped into the circle of his arm, the one not holding Lily, and pressed her forehead to his shoulder. Ethan froze. Then slowly, carefully, he wrapped his other arm around her too. 3 small hearts beating against his, one his daughter by blood, one by choice. In that condensed moment of stillness, sirens fading dawn, light filtering through windows, the bond deepened beyond words. Lily's trust burned steady and bright. Mia's shifted from suspicion to fierce, reluctant loyalty. Ethan held them both, tears slipping silently down his own face for the first time in years. Remorse still gnawed, years lost, nights cold, but gratitude overwhelmed it. These girls had cracked him open, and in doing so had begun to heal what he hadn't known was broken. From that morning forward, the apartment became home not because of marble or views, but because of quiet mornings with oatmeal-shared photo albums and 2 small hands finding his without hesitation. The love grew passionate in its protectiveness, intense in its quiet promises. And Ethan Caldwell, once the coldest man in Chicago, learned what it meant to be needed, truly needed. October 2025 darkened early over Chicago, the lake, turning slate gray under a sky heavy with coming rain. The apartment on the 24th floor had begun to feel like a fragile sanctuary, warm light spilling from every room, the scent of fresh coffee lingering in the mornings, laughter from Lily and Mia echoing down the hallways as they explored drawers filled with things they had never owned. Ethan moved through the space with deliberate care, learning the small rhythms of their days. Lily's habit of tracing the dog tags when she felt uncertain. Mia's quiet way of watching him from corners as though waiting for the mask to slip. He savored these moments in silence, each one a quiet victory against the years he had lost. Yet the city outside refused to forget. It began with a single encrypted message on Ethan's private line at 4:17 in the afternoon. The sender was listed only as Uncle Ray, the name he had used for Raymond Voss, since Ethan was 22, when Ray had pulled him out of a bad debt and taught him how to run numbers without getting caught. Ray Voss consigliere for 15 years, the man who had stood beside Ethan at every major deal, every quiet funeral, every late-night strategy session. The man Ethan had trusted more than blood. The message was brief. Meet me. Old warehouse on the west side. Alone. We need to talk about the girl. Ethan stared at the screen until the words blurred. His thumb hovered over the reply button. Then he deleted the message and stood. He found the girls in the living room. Lily sat cross-legged on the rug, showing Mia how to fold origami cranes from printer paper Ethan had left out for school projects. Sarah watched from the sofa, a cup of tea cradled in both hands, the lines of exhaustion finally softening around her eyes. I have to step out, Ethan said quietly. Lily looked up first. Where? Business. He kept his voice even. I'll be back before dinner. Mia's gaze sharpened. Is it them again, the Detroit people? Ethan hesitated only a second, then shook his head. Something else. Chen will stay here. You're safe. Lily stood slowly. Can I come with you? The question pierced him. He knelt, meeting her eyes. Not this time, but I promise I'll come back. She searched his face, then nodded once, small, trusting. The trust burned in his chest like a brand. He left through the private elevator, Chen at his shoulder. The drive to the west side took 23 minutes, long enough for doubt to coil tighter. Ray had never summoned him like this. Never used coded language. Never mentioned the girl. The warehouse loomed at the end of a cracked service road, rusted metal, siding broken windows, taped with cardboard, the faint smell of diesel and old concrete. Ethan stepped out alone, coat unbuttoned against the wind. Chen waited in the car, engine running. Ray stood near the loading dock, hands in the pockets of his gray wool coat. 63 years old, silver hair, still thick eyes, sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses. He looked older than Ethan remembered, shoulders stooped, face lined with something heavier than time. You came, Ray said. You asked. Ray exhaled smoke from the cigarette he had been hiding. I always knew you'd listen to family. Ethan's stomach turned cold. What is this about? Ray flicked ash to the ground. The girl, Lily. She's changing you, softening you. The Detroit crew saw it. Everyone's seeing it. You're making mistakes. Ethan's voice stayed level. I'm making choices. Choices that cost us the riverfront. Choices that make us look weak. Ray stepped closer. I've kept this organization alive for you. Kept the knives out of your back. And now you're ready to throw it away for a kid you didn't even know existed until last week. The words landed like blows. Ethan felt the scar pull tight across his ribs, phantom pain flaring. She's my daughter. Ray's laugh was short, bitter. Blood doesn't make family. Loyalty does. And you're choosing her over us. Silence stretched, cold, heavy. Then Ray spoke again, softer. I paid Marco. $500,000 up front. The rest when it was done. I told him to make it look like Detroit. Clean break. You'd step back, I'd step in. Keep things running the way they should. Ethan felt the world tilt. Numbness climbed his arms. You... Ray met his eyes without flinching. I did it for the family. The real one. Not some street kid who showed up with a sob story. The betrayal tore through Ethan like fire, violent, consuming. Ray had been there when Ethan buried his own father. Ray had taught him how to survive. Ray had called him son when no one else did. And Ray had tried to kill his daughter. Ethan's voice came out raw. You sent men to take her. To use her against me. Ray shrugged. Leverage. You wouldn't listen any other way. Ethan stepped forward, slow, deliberate. Where are they now? Ray smiled thinly. Already moving. They have the girl's friend Mia. Picked her up from the park after school. Quiet. No fuss. You come alone to the old steel mill on Ashland, hand over the deeds, and they walk away. Everyone walks away. Ethan's heart slammed against his ribs. Mia, the girl who had finally let him hold her. The girl who had started calling him by name instead of him. Rage surged, primal blinding, but he forced it down. You think I'll let you hurt them? Ray's smile faded. I think you'll do what's necessary. Like always. Ethan stared at the man who had once been everything to him. Then he turned without another word and walked back to the SUV. Chen opened the door. Sir Steel Mill on Ashland. Now. The drive blurred. Ethan sat in the back seat, hands clenched until his knuckles whitened. Guilt crashed over him in waves, gnawing, merciless. He had brought this danger into their lives. His world had touched them. His past had reached out with cold fingers and taken Mia. He arrived at the mill alone, coat open, hands visible. The building was cavernous, empty except for rusted machinery and broken skylights, letting in thin shafts of gray light. Mia sat on a metal chair in the center of the open-floor wrists, zip-tied behind her back, mouth taped. Two men stood behind her, Detroit muscle faces hard. The leader stepped forward. Deeds. Ethan held up a slim folder. Here. He walked slowly, each step measured. When he reached Mia, he knelt. Her eyes were wide, terrified, but dry. She had not cried. Not yet. He peeled the tape gently from her mouth. I'm here, he whispered. Mia's voice cracked. They said you wouldn't come. I came. He cut the zip ties with a small knife from his pocket. Mia rubbed her wrists, trembling. The leader laughed. Touching. Now the deeds. Ethan stood, handed over the folder. The man opened it, then froze. Empty pages. Ethan's voice was quiet. You think I'd bring real ones? The men tensed. Hands moved toward jackets. Before they could draw, Ethan's security poured through the side doors, silent, efficient, Chen at the front. The confrontation ended in seconds. Men disarmed, cuffed, no shots fired. Mia threw herself into Ethan's arms. He lifted her, holding tight as she buried her face in his shoulder, small body shaking with silent sobs. "I thought—" She choked. "I thought you wouldn't—" "I will always come for you," he said against her hair. "Always." Back at the apartment, Lily waited in the foyer, pale eyes red. When the door opened and she saw Mia safe in Ethan's arms, she ran forward. The three of them collided in a tangle of small limbs and quiet tears. Sarah stood behind them, hand over her mouth. Ethan set Mia down gently. Lily took her friend's hand. They looked up at him, trust absolute, now burning bright. Ethan knelt. "I'm sorry," he said. "This was my fault, my past." Mia shook her head. "You came." Lily touched his cheek. "You always come." The words broke something final inside him. Remorse still lingered, deep aching, but it was overshadowed by a love so fierce it felt like redemption. Later, in the quiet of the study, Ethan sat alone. Ray's betrayal replayed in his mind, each memory a fresh wound. He had lost an uncle, gained daughters. He opened his laptop, began drafting the documents that would dismantle the last shadows of his old life. Legal transfers, charitable foundations, a path toward legitimacy. Outside, rain began to fall, soft at first, then steady. Inside, 3 small hearts beat in rhythm with his. The storm had come, but the sanctuary held. Its final hours with a relentless rain that hammered Chicago's streets into dark mirrors. The apartment on the 24th floor had become a fortress of quiet routines. Homework spread across the dining table, soft music from Sarah's new phone, the occasional sound of Mia's laughter when Lily showed her how to braid friendship bracelets from colorful threads Ethan had ordered. Online. Yet beneath the surface, calm tension coiled tighter each day. Ray Voss remained in custody, silent under interrogation. But whispers reached Ethan through trusted channels. Remnants of the old network refused to accept the shift. They saw his retreat from the shadows as betrayal. They saw the girls as weakness. The call came at 7:43 in the evening. Chen's voice on the secure line was clipped urgent. "Sir, they have Lily." Took her from the school parking lot when the after-school program let out. Mia's safe, she ran to the teacher, but Lily's gone. They left a burner phone. "One demand you alone at the abandoned rail yard off 31st. 30 minutes. Ethan felt the world narrow to a single piercing point. The phone slipped from his hand. He caught it before it hit the floor. Sarah stood frozen in the kitchen doorway, face draining of color. Mia appeared behind her eyes, already filling with tears she refused to let fall. Dad, Mia's voice cracked on the word she had only begun to use. Ethan turned. The sight of her small, fierce, terrified tore through him like shrapnel. He crossed the room in 3 strides, knelt, pulled both girls into his arms. Mia buried her face in his shoulder. Sarah joined them, hand trembling on Lily's empty space. "I'm going," he said against Mia's hair. "I'm bringing her home." Sarah's whisper was raw. "Ethan, I know the risks." He met her eyes. "But she's my daughter. I don't leave family behind." He stood, kissed Mia's forehead, then Sarah's. Then he left coat unbuttoned, no weapon visible, only the cold certainty in his stride. The rail yard stretched dark and skeletal under sodium lights that flickered like dying stars. Rusted boxcars lined the tracks. Weeds pushed through cracked concrete. 3 men waited in the open space between 2 derelict engines. Lily sat on the ground between them, wrists bound with duct tape, mouth taped shut, hoodie torn at the sleeve. Her face was streaked with tears and dirt. One cheek bore a fresh bruise. She looked small against the vast emptiness, impossibly fragile. Ethan walked forward slowly, hands raised. Rain plastered his hair to his skull, soaked through his sweater. He stopped 10 feet away. "Let her go." The leader, a man Ethan recognized from old photos, one of Ray's quiet lieutenants, smiled thinly. "Deeds first. Then the kid." Ethan reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a single flash drive. "Everything's here. Digital transfer. Irrevocable. You get the riverfront holdings. I walk away clean." The man nodded to one of the others. The subordinate stepped forward, took the drive, plugged it into a rugged laptop. Minutes passed, rain drumming on metal roofs, Lily's muffled breathing the only other sound. The man looked up. "It's real." Ethan's voice stayed steady. "Now let her go." The leader hesitated, then jerked his head. The second man cut Lily's wrist bindings. She stumbled forward, legs unsteady from cold and fear. Ethan moved to meet her. Halfway across the open space, the leader raised a hand. "One more thing." He drew a pistol, slow, deliberate. Ethan froze. Lily reached him, small hands clutching his soaked sweater. She looked up, eyes wide with horror, confusion, trust that refused to break even now. Dad, she whispered through the tape he gently peeled away. I've got you, he said. The leader's voice carried over the rain. You think you can walk away. After everything, Ray was right. You're weak now. Ethan shifted, placing himself fully between Lily and the gun. This ends tonight. The man raised the pistol higher. In that suspended heartbeat, Ethan felt every scar, every regret, every moment he had failed her converge. Remorse surged, violent, blinding, for the life that had led to this moment. For the empire that had once meant everything and now meant nothing compared to the small, trembling girl behind him. He spoke quietly to Lily. Close your eyes, sweetheart. She did. The shot never came. Headlights cut through the rain, 2 unmarked cars screeching into the yard. Doors flew open. Federal agents poured out badges, flashing voices, shouting commands. The leader cursed pistol, swinging toward the new threat. His men hesitated. Ethan moved fast, instinctive. He scooped Lily into his arms, shielding her body with his own, as he ran toward the nearest boxcar for cover. A second shot cracked, Wild panicked. The bullet grazed his shoulder, hot pain flaring, but he didn't stop. Behind the rusted metal, he set Lily down gently. Blood soaked his sweater. He ignored it. Stay here. Don't move. She grabbed his hand. Don't leave me. I won't. He pressed the dog tags into her palm. Hold these, for luck. Then he stepped out, hands raised, drawing attention away from her. The agents moved in. Shouts, cuffs clicking. The leader dropped to his knees, weapon kicked away. Ethan staggered back to the boxcar. Lily launched herself at him again. He caught her pain lancing through his shoulder, but he held on. She sobbed against his chest. You're bleeding. I'm okay. His voice broke. You're safe. That's all that matters. Sirens wailed closer. Paramedics arrived. Ethan refused the stretcher until Lily was checked first. Blanket wrapped around her, warm cocoa pressed into her hands. Only then did he allow them to look at his shoulder. In the ambulance, Lily sat beside him, small hand in his larger one. Rain streaked the windows. City lights blurred past. She looked up at him, eyes huge, tear-filled. You took the bullet for me. He swallowed hard. I'd take 1,000. Her voice trembled. Why? Because you're my daughter. The words came out rough, raw. Because I love you more than anything I've ever known. Because every day I didn't know you existed was a day I failed you, and I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never feel alone again. Lily pressed her forehead to his arm. I was so scared. I know. He kissed the top of her head. But you were brave. Braver than me. She looked at the dog tags, still clutched in her fist. Then at him. You're my dad now. Really, he nodded, tears slipping free, mixing with rain on his face. Really. The ambulance doors opened at the hospital. Doctors swarmed. Ethan refused sedation until Lily was settled in the pediatric wing, warm bed, soft blankets, Mia and Sarah already waiting. When the pain medication finally took hold, he drifted Lily's small hand still in his. In the quiet between heartbeats, the conflict inside him reached its peak, remorse for the past, gratitude for this second-chance love, so fierce it burned away every last shadow. He had almost lost her. But he had not, and in that deepened, unbreakable bond, father and daughter forged in rain and blood, he found the only empire that mattered. It's close beneath a sky that finally cleared after days of relentless rain, leaving Chicago washed clean and glittering under a thin moon. The apartment on the 24th floor no longer felt like borrowed space. It had become home in the quietest, most profound way through shared breakfasts, where Lily carefully poured orange juice for everyone through evenings, when Mia read aloud from library books while Sarah listened with eyes half closed in, peace through the soft sound of Ethan's footsteps checking on them long after lights out. The scars remained on his shoulder in his memories, in the faint shadows beneath Lily's eyes, but they no longer defined the days. One crisp Saturday morning, Ethan stood at the kitchen island, sleeves rolled to his elbows, attempting pancakes for the first time. Flour dusted his dark sweater. Batter dripped onto the marble counter. Lily perched on a stool, chin in hands, watching with wide-eyed fascination. Mia leaned against the refrigerator, arms crossed, but lips twitching. You're doing it wrong, Lily said softly. Ethan glanced over. Show me. She slid off the stool, small bare feet silent on the warm tile. Standing beside him, barely reaching his elbow, she took the whisk, demonstrating the slow, steady motion her mother had once taught her, with a cracked plastic bowl and half a cup of flour stretched across 3 days. Ethan watched her hands, still thin, still fragile from years of not enough, and felt the familiar ache rise again, remorse so deep it bordered on physical pain. He had walked past her lemonade stand hundreds of times. He had owned the hotel across the street. He had lived in towers while she shivered beneath them. The contrast still tore at him, violent, unrelenting even now when warmth and safety surrounded her. Yet gratitude overwhelmed the guilt. She was here, breathing, smiling, teaching him how to make pancakes. When the first batch came out lopsided but Golden Lily clapped quietly. Mia took one bite, chewed thoughtfully, then gave a single nod. Not bad. Sarah appeared in the doorway, robe belted loosely, hair soft from sleep. She looked at the scene. Flour on Ethan's cheek, Lily licking batter from a spoon, Mia stealing another pancake, and her eyes filled without warning. Ethan noticed. He set the spatula down, crossed to her, and drew her into a gentle embrace. No words, only the quiet certainty that they were building something real. Later that afternoon, Ethan gathered them in the living room. Sunlight poured through the windows, catching dust motes in slow golden spirals. He sat on the edge of the sectional, elbows on knees, hands clasped. "I've made some decisions," he began. Lily and Mia exchanged glances. Sarah sat beside him, hand resting lightly on his arm. The casino operations, the parts that lived in shadow, are finished. Sold. Transferred. Dissolved. What remains is legitimate hotels, real estate, a foundation for children who still stand on corners selling what little they have. He looked at Lily. "I'm naming it after you. The Lily Harper Haven. Free meals, tutoring, warm coats, books. A place where no child has to choose between food and school." Lily's eyes widened. "Me, you," he said, "because you reminded me what matters." Mia spoke next, voice small but steady. "What about us?" Ethan turned to her. "You and your mom are welcome here as long as you want. Or we find you a place of your own, your choice." "But I'd like," he swallowed. "I'd like to adopt you both. Officially. Legally. If you'll have me." Silence fell soft, condensed electric. Lily looked at Sarah. Sarah looked at Mia. Mia looked at Lily. Then Lily stood, walked to Ethan, and climbed onto his lap without hesitation. She wrapped thin arms around his neck. "Yes," she whispered. Mia followed slower, more guarded, then sat beside him and leaned her head against his shoulder. Sarah's tears fell freely now. "You don't have to do this." "I want to," Ethan said. "More than anything I've ever wanted." He looked down at the two girls, one by blood, one by heart, and felt the last walls inside him dissolve. Love surged, passionate, burning, absolute. Not the cold calculation of power, but the fierce, messy humankind that stayed awake through nightmares, that bandaged, scraped knees, that whispered, "I'm here" at 3 a.m. In that moment of stillness, he understood wealth could buy towers, but only love could build a family. Weeks turned to months. The Lily Harper Haven opened in a renovated community center on the south side, bright murals on the walls, shelves full of books, a kitchen that never ran out of hot meals. Children came thin, tired, wary, and slowly learned to smile again. Ethan attended every school event, every parent-teacher conference, every dance recital. He learned to braid hair badly to help with fractions, patiently to sit quietly while two girls talked about their day. One evening, in early spring, he found Lily on the balcony, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the city lights. He joined her, leaning on the railing. "Thinking about the old corner?" he asked gently. She nodded. "Sometimes I still feel cold, even when I'm warm." He knelt beside her. "That cold lives in memory. But you're here now. Safe. Loved. Always." She turned to him, eyes shining. "I love you, Dad." The word simple enormous shattered what remained of his old armor. He pulled her close. "I love you too, sweetheart. More than anything." Mia joined them moments later, slipping under his other arm. Sarah followed, resting her head on his shoulder. They stood together, 4 people who had once been strangers watching the city that had once separated them. Love, they learned, recognized no color of skin, no depth of wallet. Poverty could strip a child bare, but compassion could clothe her again. Wealth could build walls, but only kindness could open doors. From every hardship they had endured, they drew quiet, humanistic lessons, the value of seeing the invisible, the strength found in small acts of courage, the healing power of second chances. Knowledge grows when we choose to listen instead of walk past. A lesson appears each time we protect someone smaller than ourselves. Education begins the moment we admit we were wrong and resolve to do better. Another lesson teaches us that time cannot be bought, but it can be given freely. Kaya knowledge reminds us that one child's voice can change everything. Education shows that real change starts with a single act of care. A lesson whispers that family is chosen as much as it is born. Knowledge proves that love crosses every divide. And the final lesson, perhaps the deepest, is this: compassion never asks for permission, it simply arrives. To everyone watching this video today, may you carry good health in your body, joy in your days, and peace in your heart always. If this story moved you, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. New engaging videos drop every day, stories of courage, kindness, and second chances, so don't miss out. Tell me in the comments, how did this story make you feel? Does it remind you of anything real in your own life? Share what touches your heart. I read every comment and truly listen to the emotions you pour out. Thank you for being here with me. Goodbye for now, and I promise I'll see you again in the next video. Disclaimer: all stories on this channel are fictional and created solely for entertainment purposes. Any resemblance to real people, events, or places is purely coincidental.